Here with you again. This is Dave from the Thank You Plant Medicine movement. And today we have a very special interview lined up with a lady named Lelehnia DuBois from California. She suffered a spinal cord injury that left her in a wheelchair and in a very bad state. And through the use of plant medicine, well, she'll tell us her story herself. But now she's an activist, an entrepreneur, named in the top 100 women in weed, and she's doing a lot of different human rights work. And she contacted me because she graciously agreed to host a sharing circle with me, which we're going to do on Thursday mornings, every Thursday. So this is a great new ally for the movement, and let's hear her story. Let's get to know her. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Lelehnia. Welcome to the show.
What an introduction.
I hope I did justice to the amazing journey that you've been on. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about about where you're from and how it is that you ended up like in a wheelchair?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a lot. Where am I from? Well, I'm originally from San Diego in a little town called Ocean Beach. And if you look up at the history of Ocean Beach, I was born into activism, quite literally. We were a very, very politically active community. We did a lot of work in the women's movement, in education, in food. My mother was one of the founders of the first food cooperatives in the United States. And it was just, there was a lot going on for the good or the bad of it. And there was a lot of cannabis during those times, and we were right on the border. And so there was a lot of mixing of communities. And at the same time, there was in the world all this political activism going on. And when I was 5 years old, my mom decided that she wanted to find a better place to raise her little girls and build kind of a community, a lifestyle in the ways that she felt were going to benefit her and her little girls. And we ended up in a remote area in Northern California called Trinity County. And she was a nurse, so she started nursing. She was a nurse at the hospital there, but it's a very, very rural area. In fact, we call it the Emerald Triangle because energetically it's much like the Bermuda Triangle as far as the electromagnetic field, but it's also very isolated, and we really had to support each other to live here. And so she very quickly became a midwife in the community and went out and helped minors who didn't ever see people, brought them medicines or helped them supplement their health. And she gave birth to many, many, many babies throughout the community. And because we were so rural, we didn't have access to but what we could self-create. And so whether it was because she was an activist or because she was a survivalist or because she was a good person and a nurse, plant medicines is how we navigated. Before people were arguing about vaccines, my mother was choosing which vaccines we were to have and self-administering them. She also created her own vaccines for us with plants such as poison oak. We lived on a property that had an excessive amount of poison oak, and everybody was getting very sick and continually getting it. And that next spring, she inoculated all of us with the baby buds of poison oak to ensure that we we're okay. And none of us who went through that process with her get severe cases of poison oak, if any, now. So it's always been a part of what my life has been. She grew her food for her family. We froze our vegetables. We canned. We only really purchased for many years our grains and self-produced almost everything else. We made our own bread. You know, we were taught how to sew and how to knit. And all those things, and I rebelled against it all. I went, no way. I want to be a model. I want to go, you know, shopping at the big stores. And I had a father in Southern California. So I, as a young adult, immersed myself into that very external validation lifestyle. But my mother was still up here building that life. And in 1994, or no, 1996, she got ill, and I had two younger sisters, and I committed to staying in this Northern California, very rural, non-external validation. The trees validate you up here, community. Through her passing and after her passing, and dove into nursing school because I started learning what healing was about. I started seeing the value of being a healer, and I became very interested in medicine, Western medicine though, not all the woo-woo stuff. And I dove into nursing school. And that's when I got injured. Is I was in my last semester getting ready to go of I was in an LVN program, and I was getting ready to go into my last semester to become an RN. And I caught a patient, and knew when it happened, I went, oh gosh, bad body mechanics, but didn't really feel much. Went home, went to bed, and I woke up the next morning and I couldn't dress myself. And that started this incredible journey of taking me from a dancer. I taught dancing. I was very progressive in the early movement of the snowboarding community. I was a very, very active woman. In fact, I think I probably worked through a lot of my emotional issues through that adrenaline, grinding it out kind of attitude. And this back injury did a couple things. It stopped me when I didn't know how to stop. It also kept me in this community and didn't allow me to go back out into that world of all that external validation that I was so thriving on. And it forced me to very much start understanding my own body and how to heal my body. And through that, I learned that the traumas, the emotional traumas, had severely impacted my body. I have had extreme I've been kidnapped. I've been sexually abused repeatedly in a community situation. You know, I mentioned my mother died, my sisters died. I've had a lot of that kind of lifetime trauma. And I was holding it all in my body, and I was very much in my head. And my injury helped me learn that that was like what I needed to listen to. And then I thought Western medicine was going to save me. And within 8 months of trying to navigate that holistically through Western medicine, and when I mean holistically, I mean through spiritual meditation. I mean, I was using everything that I thought I could. I ended up going into what's called Demerol toxicity. And it's not because I took too much Demerol. In fact, I went into the coma because they gave me more because they thought I was not taking enough. It was because my body didn't like it. And my body was reacting to it. And I went into this, it was only 6 hours, but it was life-changing. I went into this coma experience for 6 hours, And it very much told me, and that's a whole show in itself, but it showed me that the lessons and the tools that my mother was working with were the true healing medicines and the true power in the universe. And I immediately, when I came out of that, I'd already been working with a really amazing psychic on understanding how I navigate the world better. But I got out of that experience and I dove all of me into healing, my own personal healing. It was a very selfish journey. And I dove into that. And my sisters said, please try using cannabis as a medicine. And I started to, and it really helped me. You know, I didn't learn to work with it well enough at first to manage my pain, but it did help me separate from my pain and dive into more spiritual, authentic spiritual practices. Instead of laying there going, God, I wish I could meditate. I hurt so fucking bad. I was able to kind of separate from that and actually like fall asleep during meditation, which wasn't happening. And that just started this journey. And I very quickly learned through getting some cannabis from a friend, and I vomited for 3 days, that knowing your grower and knowing where your medicine came from really mattered. Because that person had grown with Miracle Grow. And it turned out that I was reacting to that because I was so sensitive and I was starting to learn how my body responded to all these things. So it took many years of spiritual work. I used to do some spiritual leadership and run meditation groups. And then I started having all these people say to me when I was going into that space of divine communication, and they would say, "Are you high?" And I was like, I'm not high. I'm tuned in, man. In fact, I'm clearer than I've been in my entire life. Um, what is this high? How? Because I'd never taken things to really get high. I mean, I drank alcohol to party when I was young, but that wasn't my mission. I was a very high energy person and I wanted to do a lot. And I was really irritated because I had been through so much trauma through the drug war that I didn't want to be stigmatized as a dumb stoner or that I was high. I thought I was an intelligent person. And when people were saying, "Oh, are you high?" it was like they were saying what I was talking about was stupid. And so I wanted to dive in and understand what that meant more. And my mother had always taught me that if nature makes it, you use it with wisdom, there's purpose. As soon as mankind touches it, like, be careful, you know? So I started opening up to other plant medicines, and it started with peyote. And it's gone through to I've worked with fungi. I've worked with. I've tried some plant-based DMT before, and there's a few others that I think I'm forgetting, but I've not done many of them more than once. And what I really discovered is that what they're all doing is opening us up and giving us this. It's almost like I've described cannabis as an angel. It's a communicator to that divine source or to our divine hearts. And these plant medicines are incredibly valuable on so many levels. But the reason I really started going beyond my mindset of science is king and what is all this other stuff is because I wanted to understand if I was having authentic spiritual experiences in this journey that I was experiencing, or was I high? And that's how I got to this place of being an activist for the plant that I love so much, which is cannabis. I now use cannabis continuously. I use it on my skin. I ingest it raw. I ingest it cooked. I do smoke it constantly. In fact, I have a joint here waiting for me for when I get distracted by my pain. I have created my community leadership around it. Um, I'm building a business around it. And frankly, most of my really close relationships have some connection to it, whether they were not established on that, but we all share that connection. And I feel legalization has been a really great vehicle so we could have these conversations about all the amazing things that nature has created for us.
Oh, absolutely. Lelehnia, thanks for sharing all this. I'd like to give a little hello to our viewers. We got Michelle tuning in with the hearts. Brianna says this is relatable. Yes, our bodies react to the mind.
Yes.
Said, I'm a medical teacher, and I say, preach it, sister. We have Gary sending a swan or a snake. It's really great to see everyone tuning in. Let us know where you're watching from. That's always fascinating to see. So,
ooh, yeah. I'd like to respond to the person who mentioned the body, because that is such a valuable part of this conversation. It's you always need to create a catalyst and you need a catalyst to create change, right? And plant medicine is one, and we're two. And we need to also, the way we're all reaching out to understand all these plants, we need to do that with our own bodies too, because the way we know that these plants are right for us is through understanding what our body is telling us, right? What do we need? What kind of cannabis do we need? Do we want to try fungi? But we really don't know those answers until we understand what our body needs.
Lelehnia, I want to ask you a question. Cannabis has helped you in so many ways that you just explained. How are you able to channel it into such an active lifestyle of, you're working on with the government, you're working on entrepreneurial projects, you're working on, reducing human trafficking and kind of humanitarian work. And I know that there are some people that marijuana just puts them into a more lazy mode, right? So how do you meet the medicine with and use it to fuel activity?
Well, again, knowing your body and knowing your plant, that's the bottom line. So, we'll just focus on cannabis alone. Is when I first sat down with my spiritual teacher, I was very concerned about being a grower and because where does it go? And this is what he said to me, and this will show you how long it is, because now I don't even know how many cures we know that it works on, or how many, but at the time we knew that cannabis impacted 258 diseases in humanity. And what he said to me was, if a plant can do that, how powerful is it, and what kind of energy is it gathering, right? And so if you're transmuting positive, loving, healing energy into it, then you're okay with what it is going out in the world. So with that laying out the premise is, if I were to eat an edible at this time of day or any time earlier, a certain edible made a certain way, I would literally be passing out. I mean, I wouldn't want to drive because I could pass out at the wheel. But I know that about my body. That happens with people. I used to take Motrin, and I would fall asleep. I passed out. The first time I ever had caffeine was in high school. I was a cheerleader, and I literally passed out on the football field from caffeine. So again, it's knowing your body, right? So if you are a very high energy person, then you want to and you want to ground yourself, then you want to find those genetics, those strains, or those cultivars. There's a lot of different ways to articulate that makeup of that plant that best harmonizes with your body. Now, that's not easy because we do have so many names for the plant, and I am not a medical provider, but I am very much, I know vibrations. And when you smell this plant, it can make you feel very ill and not good, or it can make you want it. And I believe, and my experience has shown me, that if you are testing it, smell it. And if your body desires it, then it's probably the right medicine for you. And if you're trained and then let's take that to another level, if you put it in your hand and it feels right, then maybe it's the right medicine for you. But you have to understand what that means. And we haven't been educated in that conversation so much that we don't need help from external practitioners. We do need those people who do understand and can identify those things to help us go to the right form of cannabis or the right form of fungi or any form of plant medicine, whether it be chamomile or, something more extreme. If we don't know that within ourselves, then we reach out to masters.
Lelehnia, well, first of all, I'm going to say hello to Igor tuning in from Belgium. Great to have you here, my friend. And we have Brianna in Austin, Texas. Lovely to see.
How fun.
Gary says Big Pharma is going down.
Yeah, I think COVID is going to help with that a little bit. We're having to think about, where do we get things? How do we source things, right? And how is the easiest way for us to source them? And that is always local. And our own ecosystems have so many medicines just ripe and ready for us when we understand how to use them. And we have people who are on heart medications that really need those, but those heart medications also grow in our backyards.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have Pamela in Costa Rica joining us. And hi, Pamela. I'm in Costa Rica too. Great to see you. So, Lelehnia, are you optimistic about other psychedelics being positive for chronic illnesses?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any experience with other psychedelics that you'd be willing to share?
Sure. Well, I mentioned peyote, that I tried peyote in a very a prayer circle. It was done very purposeful. The only psychedelic or other kind of feared or plant medicine that has all that around it that I have tried, I'll just speak to because I've tried quite a few, but none of them have really been a tool that I wish to carry forward. And not because it was negative necessarily, but because I feel better in my own space. I have more fun. I get to see more, experience more in my own space. The ones that I've experienced with the most, and the reason that they're on that I have, is because they work for me the most. And fungi is one of those. I mentioned my injuries. I used to have to wear Jergesic patches all the time, and I don't know how many listeners understand what those are, but those are very, very strong fentanyl patches. And they were the only medication that would allow me to read a book. and focus at all. And so I started exploring when I didn't answer your question about the cannabis and the activity, but so I started exploring because if I took a narcotic and I publicly spoke or I engaged, you don't remember, you might get through it, but it just doesn't work. And I was at a 3-weekend festival that I was a part of. And, it was really hard because I was going around in a chair and stuff. And I was in excruciating pain. And a friend of mine, there was just no way to get me out. And I can go into severe tachycardia because I carry so much pain with me on a anyways, that my body a little bit more, and I don't manage it very well as a baby. And a really good friend of mine, and I had used fungi for, more recreational purposes, gave me some, and it totally helped that severe pain. And it was a microdose. I'm a very, very little microdoser. And I've used it in moments when I had to dissolve a business, and I was very sad about that. And I wasn't sure if my line was going to continue forward. And I went and I took a little tiny bit, and I go and I walk in the woods and I think, and I was tuning into, what is it that I really need, and I realized that I wasn't receiving. And it just helped me in that moment because I was hurting, and I felt very guilty for having to say no. And I knew I needed to process that, and I couldn't take, a couple days. I wanted to engage now. And those helped me step away from the anxiety and the fear and into the process more. And I process like that with all my things. It's just under severe stress or high situations like that, it helps me push through when I'm feeling like I need support. And I have a good friend who just discovered that fungi really helped her break through a severe MS crisis. I know another good friend who's been under very specific therapies with psychedelics for severe depression that it's working with her for. And she's working indirectly with a doctor with that and going through guided meditation practices. I like I keep saying, plant medicine is there for a reason. But I think there's a deeper medicine that is universal. And plant medicine is like a thermometer or like a knife to cook your dinner or the stove. It's a tool that helps us get to that a really amazing center or meal that we're creating. And that's us. That's our hearts. And that's the earth and the universe and vibrational energy. And unfortunately, we really got unplugged from vibrational energy and need these medicines to help move us through that space so we understand that we are universal beings and not these individual entities that have no impact.
Oh, I love that. We had a comment here from Brianna. I lost a friend last week, age 39. I feel weed would have been life-changing for him. Yeah, how many people, right? How many people do we lose to different mental illnesses? Like with the veterans, it's such a high suicide rate because they got traumatized. So Lelehnia, I'm super inspired by the fact that you're choosing to become politically active in your area. So could you tell us a little bit about how you've been politically active and whether you must have faith in the political system?
I have faith in humanity. I do. And the political system is now a part of humanity. You know, we made it for the good or the bad. We're all a part of it. You know, I believe we're all interconnected. So, boy, my activism, well, you know, I never planned on it. I thought I was going to be in spiritual leadership. I thought I was going to be like meditating with everybody. And then I really did fall in love with the plant, and I fell in love with my community. I love where I live. I love my community. I just love the values that allowed us to grow this plant for so long and allowed us to build sustainably. Did I lose you? Oh, there you are. So let's see. In 2009, or well, let's see. I had my son in 2005, and I started growing for my own medicine and to sustain myself. And I started providing for a dispensary that was all female owned, that was doing all the right things in medical legalization in California. And I just loved what they were doing. I loved being able to go into a dispensary that didn't feel like I was a drug dealer. You know, I worked at the hospital. I've been in this community for a very long time. I had strong roots. I didn't want to be like shamed by walking into a place that seemed like a drug, you know, like I was doing a drug deal. I was learning about the plant, so I wanted people to know more than me when I went in to get medicine because I had so much to learn. They were educating. They also were one of the first dispensaries in California to test. So all of my science and all this like non-plant thinking, they were like this nice medium in my community that wasn't really existing at that time. And then in 2009, there was a lot of shifts federally happening around the industry. And I think it was about 2012, landlords that were housing dispensaries were put at risk. And that dispensary was possibly having to close. And they reached out to me and asked if I would start going before the Board of Supervisors because I didn't look like your typical pot grower. And I had a more diverse experience and strong community roots. And they asked if I would go before the supervisors and tell them why I felt the Hummingbird Healing Center needed to stay open. And that's kind of where my adult advocacy began. And that very quickly, I went through some really horrific things. I was blackmailed, or someone attempted to blackmail me. Fortunately, I was doing everything medically legal. But I went through a lot of things, and I was a patient. I was a single mom. I was on disability, yet my neighbors were robbing me. Yet people were taking advantage of me, and I was pissed off. I thought, gosh, you know, no one did this to me when I was a strong, independent, sexy woman. Now I'm like, I need that support, and people are taking advantage of me. And I thought, God, if people are doing that to me, what are they doing to other people? So I helped dispensaries. I ended up moving to Lake County, and I helped the dispensaries in that area navigate their board of supervisors. Then I went into some political advisory role for a legislative campaign in 2012 that really taught me a lot. And then I decided it was all a bunch of BS, and I left everything and went to Utah. Fell in love. It brought me back to my community. And a couple years later, there was a meeting, and it said, cannabis, lawyers, doctors, community members, let's come and talk. And I had dreamed of being able to sit in the room where my hippie family, my logger family, my teachers, everybody, we could all be friends, because I never got to have that, you know. Everybody had to kind of like be in their separate worlds because of weed. And I showed up at this meeting and I got engaged to the process. And within a few months later, I became chair and president of that organization, which was called California Cannabis Voice Humboldt. And we were really the strong players that brought the farmers out of the woods into policy for the good or the bad of it. And then I learned that policy was built on money, and that the real people who made the decisions were the business people that had the pocketbooks. And I left that role and dove into learning how to be an entrepreneur, and seeked out to find ways to lead my community through doing good things, because I felt strongly with where we were going that our community was going to have a lot of pitfalls, and that we were going to need a lot of support. And I see medicine and food as very much a human rights issue. I see healthy people very necessary. And I decided to engage in being a human rights commissioner, which has been an amazing joy. It's a very, I very much enjoy that role. And that's how I've gotten to participate in supporting our community around human trafficking and other issues like that.
Wow, amazing. What a journey you've been on. So Lelehnia, recently I published saying that we were looking for people to help lead the sharing circles, and you wrote to me, and I was curious, what made you want to host a Thank You Plant Medicine sharing circle?
Well, when I very first got involved in the politics, I was talking to my team, and I was telling them, and I had one of our California leaders circle back to me and say, I really remember when you said this. And what I told them was, we're not fighting for weed. We're fighting for the ways of our community in this sustainable lifestyle. The world needs to know what we understand of how to live within the cycles of nature, of how to respect nature, how to build sustainable homesteads. The world needs this. And I didn't by choice dive into cannabis advocacy. She pulled me in, she brought me to the table. I am an advocate for a good life. And I don't mean just humans. I mean a good universal existence. I get to exist like that within myself. And I believe that we do have the potential to exist like that within this planet. And when cannabis legalization started, I really believe that, it pierced the arrow through a dark wall. And now that wall is opening bright for so much more and the bigger conversation. And my team, years ago, we started saying this is plant medicine. I have an advisor. In fact, he's the first person I heard say plant medicine, because my products don't just have, cannabis is just one little part of what makes my product so amazing. It's all the plants and all the earth's medicines that we're using in it that makes it so amazing. And I strongly feel, especially with COVID, and you mentioned that plant medicine and understanding vibrational medicine and vibrational healing and earth healing is the most important conversation that we could have right now. And you made that happen. What you launched with this hashtag and your campaign, and the way you've gathered people across the globe on this conversation, I have so much respect and excitement around it. And I have a lot of gratitude that you saw that I could bring value. And then selfishly, my community are masters with plant medicine. We have women and men who have been working with tons of plants because of cannabis and our rural communities. Oh no, did I lose you?
No, we're still on.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought my phone was off. Um, I live in a in communities in the Emerald Triangle that has access to massive amounts of, we live in the redwoods. We live in our own very unique ecosystem. Our moss helps with nausea. You walk through our woods and you're healed. You know, you can create all sorts of medicines. And I wanted to be able to share through that community and help show all of that wisdom and share that wisdom as well. So I reached out trying to see more of what this was about and what you're up to. And here we are.
Here we are. Well, I would like to invite our viewers to join us on Thursday morning. Tomorrow I'll publish a post with the link, but we're going to be having a sharing circle every Thursday morning, 7 a.m. PST. So you can convert that to your local time. Yeah, Lelehnia, it's going to be a pleasure to co-host this with you, and we can really have some stimulating dialogues with other members of our community. So yeah, it's really great to meet you today, Lelehnia, and thanks for the amazing work you're doing. And yeah, pleasure to talk with you today.
Absolutely. I wanted to respond to Tiffany because I can't really see all of this. And I apologize that she felt I was talking. And no, I haven't heard about tulips and erectile dysfunction, but I would be happy to reach out to some of my amazing friends and see what we could find out for you.
Great. Well, that's nice of you. Marvin says, thank you so much for sharing your story. And,
my pleasure.
With that, wishing everyone a fantastic day. Thanks for joining us today. Much love.